When we were putting today's programme together, it was really, really important for us to take people kind of on a journey, really, from initially, what is 3D? What is it all about? You hear a lot about the red, the green, the blue glasses, just what's all that about? And then going from understanding 3D, the history of 3D, into, if you're a crew member, if you're a camera operator who's working in Yorkshire, who's working in London and ends up working on a 3D programme, what do you need to know about?
So when we're creating our 3D films, this is something we control very closely. Where is the convergence? What part of this image is on the screen? What's in front? What's behind? And how 3D is it? How far do we push it? Something else that's worth thinking about is, and again this has been touched on before, is your 3D budget. We've got this figure that we work to of like 3.5% positive parallax, so that's how far inside the screen things can go. But you don't necessarily want to use that all the time, and this shot where you get to look down this chasm is kind of a good example. We use, I think, our maximum budget for 3D to give you the depth of this chasm. And in the preceding shots, we haven't used that 3.5%. We're holding it back so that when you see the chasm, it's deeper and bigger than anything else that you've seen before. And that's always worth bearing in mind, so that you've got to know what your budget is and then figure out when to use it.
What's it going to take for 3D TV to take off? Well, it's three things are going to be needed: content, technology, and standards. So we need good content, and we need good technology, and I'm going to leave standards for other people to talk about. So let's talk about content and technology. So you want to broadcast a dedicated 3D channel, maybe your Sky, for example. How much content do we actually have to broadcast? Well, there are about 50 good 3D movies. There are 343 3D movies, about 50 of them are good, and that gives you about 150 hours of content. And Sky are talking about broadcasting about 80 sports events over the course of a year. That's about 240 hours of content. So add those up, you've got about 2 weeks of 3D content over the course of a year. Now you can do repeats, but we definitely do not have enough 3D content to do a 24-hour-a-day channel. Now, of course, when colour started, we didn't have colour content to do 24 hours a day. So maybe it's not such a problem, but we need more content. How are we going to get it? We have to make it. And therein lies a problem. If we make bad 3D, we will alienate our consumers. They haven't bought into 3D TV yet. If we do it badly, they aren't going to buy into it, and we'll have another 10 years before this works. So this is from Clash of the Titans, which you've heard about today already. Well, it received appalling reviews. Slate.com says, it was a washed out, dimly lit, cardboard-looking mess of a motion picture. And that's because it was converted from 2D to 3D in post-production. The St. Petersburg Times says, the film redefines 3D, but in the wrong way. Jim Cameron loves 3D, and even he warns that, quote, half-assed 3D could set back the whole medium.
As you saw on that little show and tell reel, Sam Worthington there was talking to a broomstick. You all saw that, a broomstick position where the Colonel is doing his acting there. So they were both shot independently of one another. Sam would be shot, like you saw in the still before, in a green screen area, composited into the PlayStation background. That shot would then be taken into the set where you now shoot the Colonel, and he gets shot in a rig. Interesting thing about this rig, actually, it's really cool. You've all seen The Golden Compass, I take it, with the girl Lara riding on the polar bear's back, Yorick. When we won the Oscar for that, Best Special Effects Oscar, and we developed this really cool rig where we animated a running bear. We took the data from the animation of the bear and we plugged it into a Bronco Billy, okay? A green screen Bronco Billy, which performed the exact moves that the bear was doing in its animation, so that when Lara's lying down on the bronco billy, her voice would change when it went over something like a bump in the snow or whatever. And we used the bronco billy for the Colonel there to make sure his body swung about in the machine the way it should. Cool little bit of technology. So let's have a look at the impact of doing a shot like that when you're shooting so many separate layers. I think a shot like this, there's not a huge camera move on it. And if it was done in a 2D world, you wouldn't really need motion control. We've got things so sophisticated in 2D that as long as you mimic the move generally the same, we can then put it together. Not in 3D. Because of the alignment of the cameras, every layer is going to need 3D. So you need the same move to happen on Sam Worthington, as you need to move on the Colonel here, and as you need on all the rigs that are made in 3D, and that's the 3D rig that shows the body armour that went around him. And there's the final comp again. Duck. There you go.
November the 17th this year at the Royal Albert Hall, Prince's Trust are running the Rock Gala, and I'm proud to announce that we are filming that in 3D. It's the first time the Albert Hall is being done in 3D. In fact, it's the first time the Prince's Trust are going in 3D. And Sky are very excited because it is the jewel in their crown for December. The interesting point about that for me is that we are actually running a 2D and a 3D shoot at the same time. So I have two directors, there's logistical issues around how we run it. I'm lucky that the two guys that I'm working with have no egos and they work very well together. I then have a very tight turnaround on the post, but because we're doing it as effectively a live show, the positioning of the cameras are not going, you know, I mean, we've already done it. I mean, they've all been positioned. I've got to do final recce's now. But the bottom line is I'm having to approach it and get all my cameramen to stop thinking 2D. One of the things I had in Italy was I had to, and you know, the big problem there was they were all Italian, so I had to speak through the interpreter. So when I'm kind of giving the guidance to because my director left, he had to go and meet the band, so I was left with briefing the cameraman. And, you know, the issue was when they were rehearsing, they have this instinctive, you know, cameramen have an instinctive repo position, you know, oh right, we're going to edit here, so I'll repo. And of course they can't do that on 3D. You just have to, they have to stop thinking 2D. And it's hard because if they've come from a film background, they kind of get it. Film guys get it much more than video guys. But if you've been trained in video and you've been trained in the last sort of 5 years and you've really got into it, you know, you really have to rethink how you plot out your shots. You can't get too close in 3D. You get this kind of cardboard cutout thing. I did a dance thing with a director and a DOP, which also aired on Sky, I think, on the 1st of October. It's called, I think it's called Dance, 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 because obviously I'm still in the working title mode, which we just called it 3D Dance. And it was a fascinating experience because for me, I was hired as the 3D consulting producer just to guide them all through what shots would work and what wouldn't. But I had two stereographers with me, and they didn't tell the director the shots he was going to get. So I had to step in and be the bad cop and say, you do understand that what you're about to shoot is going to look like cardboard cutout, like you've CGI'd the two interviewers. And so I had to turn to my stereographers and say, right guys, or am I really barking up the wrong tree? And they're going, oh no, you're right. And I said, right, well the director needs to know that because he's going to sit in post and he's suddenly going to go, oh, that's not the shot I imagined. And it's all to do with getting people to stop thinking 2D. You know, and I can't emphasize that enough really. It's all about really, really letting go of your preconceived ideas.